We're going.
Okay, we're going to start with a short video.
Of course.
Live stream video captures the moment a gunman wearing a dark hoodie emerges from a back pew, drawing his gun and firing inside this Texas church during Sunday morning service. The gunshots sparking panic in the pews. Worshippers seen ducking for cover. One man covering his wife with his own body. 6 seconds into the shooting, 2 members of the church security team returned fire, hitting the gunman, dropping him to the ground. 911 calls came shortly before 11 a.m.
Active threat, 1900 South Las Vegas Trail.
Inside the church, at least 5 other parishioners pulled out handguns and carefully approached the fallen gunman. One man kicks away his gun and picks it up.
It was a sad thing that he had to come into the congregation and hurt people. It's a sad thing that we had to hurt him.
We're going to need information here.
2 churchgoers and the gunman were killed.
The citizens who were inside that church undoubtedly saved 242 other parishioners.
One woman said her mother, a longtime member of the church, saw the suspect and noticed something was wrong.
The shooter was sitting next to my mother. She knew from growing up in the church that she didn't recognize this gentleman.
Outside, law enforcement secured the area as parishioners, visibly shaken, consoled one another.
We lost 2 great men
Today, evil walked boldly among us. But let me remind you, good people raised up and stopped it.
All right. Sadly, I had about a handful of videos I could have chosen just in the last couple of weeks to play tonight. But I'd like to welcome you to our community safety meeting. I'm Ellie Katz. In July 3 individuals drove up to a house of worship here in Teaneck at night and pulled out guns and started to shoot the people coming out of the prayer service with an unknown liquid substance. They then drove around the corner and did it again and allegedly yelled anti-Semitic comments. This was not deemed a biased crime. Last month, a cone was tossed into the window of a house of worship and broke the window, and this was not considered a biased crime. And just last week on Christmas Day, a man walked into the bagel shop here in Teaneck and got into an altercation with 2 individuals, and it was reported that he said, "Take off your effing hat," as a reference to the Jewish yarmulke on the customers' heads. Then he went around the corner and harassed a Jewish student with similar comments, and this was not considered a biased crime. In the state of New Jersey, biased crime laws are either so weak or convoluted that the bar seems to be impossible to reach, in my opinion. It would seem that one of the ways to combat continued rise of bias incidents would be to first call them what they are and then prosecute accordingly. Between Jersey City, Rockland County, and the incident this week in Texas, the community is on edge and concerned. As you can see today, almost 400 RSVPs. The question that I have been receiving, and I've been receiving a lot of emails and questions, is obviously what is law enforcement doing? Are there any nexus? Are there connections? How is it fair that in the state where we have the toughest gun laws that we can continue like this? To me personally, an attack on any house of worship, a religious institution, should be punishable by mandatory requirements with the burden of proof on the actor to demonstrate that it was not biased. Religious freedom should really mean something in our country, and an attack on any house of worship is an attack on every house of worship. We are fortunate tonight to have some really great resources that have made themselves available immediately after the holiday, recognizing that many New Jersey residents and beyond are scared and concerned, and we need real solutions, real answers. Please join me in thanking our panelists who have come out tonight, and trust me, the Thursday after work is a very busy day. I'm going to ask the panelists to please introduce themselves, giving 1 to 3 minutes of an introduction of who they are, or the organization that they may represent, and how they can be helpful. Tonight's, the way the format's going to go is that there are going to be cards handed out. You'll have some ushers walking around. Please write your name and questions down, And if you have someone specific that the question is referenced to after you hear who we have tonight. If your question is not picked, please don't get upset or worry. After the event, most of the panelists are going to still be available and they can answer you on a one-on-one. I do want to take a time right now to give a special thank you to our police, our fire, our EMS. If you could please join me in thanking them. I am going to have our township manager, Dean Kaczynski, in a moment give a little speech, but he'll also recognize all the elected officials here, because I myself is an elected official, so I don't want to get anyone upset if I leave anyone off, so I'm going to let him do that. But I will also want to thank tonight's hosts, Keith Kaplan, Mark Schwartz, and Ora Kornbluth. And I do want to also give a special thank you. This is a beautiful room that we're in. And Rain, who doesn't just do community safety events or Thanksgiving events for the community, has opened this up for us, and they do a great job. So if you're having an affair or an event, please come and speak to the owner of Rain over here. But I just want to personally thank you for opening this place up. It's not easy finding a venue in under 3 days with such great talented resources for about 400 people. And we want to thank you for always being willing. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to recognize our Teaneck Township Manager, Dean Kaczynski.
Thank you, Ellie. As Ellie said, we'll introduce the panel in just a minute. I just want to recognize a few people here in the audience tonight. Dr. Henry Pruitt from Council, Councilman Keith Kaplan, Deputy Mayor Mort Schwartz, Councilwoman Javon Romney Rice, and I saw Councilman Jim Dunleavy in the back. Also from the Teaneck Police Department, we have Chief O'Reilly, Deputy Chief Agello, Captain Ferranti, Lieutenant Kirshner from the Prosecutor's Office. I saw Chief Rob Anzalotti. I'm sure he came with some of his staff as well. From the Sheriff's Department, the Sheriff's here. You have all of his undersheriffs, Vinny Petrone, Dave Borzada, Cora Taylor, Under-Sheriff Kim. And from the Fire Department, we have Captain Dixon, Lieutenant Roloff, County Freeholder Tracy Zur. And from Bergenfield PD, the Chief is here. He'll introduce himself. We have Captain John McGee, and we have Artie Walzer, our President of the Board of Education. Thank you for attending. I apologize if I missed anything. Let me start by stating that Teaneck strongly condemns the latest anti-Semitic attack, which I consider an act of domestic terrorism in Rockland County, New York. We stand by the residents of Muncie and our neighboring communities who have recently fallen victim to anti-Semitic attacks. Our thoughts and prayers remain with all the victims and their families. I recently participated in an Interfaith Advisory Council conference call on December 30th. We heard from Governor Phil Murphy, Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, Superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, Patrick Callahan, Jared Maples from the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security, and representatives from the U.S. Attorney's Office and FBI. We stand united that anti-Semitism and bigotry of any kind are unacceptable to our values of diversity and will not be accepted. There is zero tolerance for such acts of hate in our state. Please be assured that you have everyone's unwavering commitment and resolve in keeping our interfaith communities safe. We will use all resources and tools available in the wake of the recent attacks in an effort to prevent further occurrences. An attack on one faith community is an attack on all faith communities. Hate does not have a home in Teaneck, in Bergen County, in the state of New Jersey, or in the United States of America. As I previously reported to the residents of Teaneck, the Township's Police Department remains in daily contact with county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, including the Joint Terrorism Task Force for updated intelligence information and threat assessment information. Presently, there are no known specific or credible threats to our community. However, our police department has increased patrols at all houses of worship and other sensitive locations within the township. I thank Sheriff Curidan, who is here this evening, for his commitment in providing additional resources to the Township of Teaneck and keeping the residents here safe. We have a great panel of speakers this evening, some of whom I personally work with, that will provide valuable information on keeping our community safe. I can't emphasize it enough to immediately report any suspicious activity to law enforcement. This is critical to our mission of keeping the community safe. I'm happy to report that since our last security symposium, many houses of worship, schools, and businesses took advantage of the free risk and vulnerability assessment surveys offered by the Teaneck Police Department in cooperation with the Bergen County's Critical Infrastructure Coordinator. Lieutenant Hirschman is here this evening for the Township Community Policing Bureau, and he will update everyone on where we stand with these surveys. As your manager, please be assured that I will continue to work with council, our local legislators, and the police department in securing the resources needed to keep Teaneck safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean Kaczynski, our Township Manager. And now, if you would like to ask a question, you have Karen Organ on the left, you have Manny Klein on the right. They'll be going around, just raise your hand, they'll give out a card, and then you can just write down. If you have a specific person that you would like to write it to, then just write the specific person, but you can write your name and your question, and we're going to try to get to as many as we can. I'd like to start now with some introductions by the panel. Like I said earlier, it's the first day back from work for most of us, and trust me when I say that everyone here is probably overwhelmed with the amount of work that they had to come to. But they decided that tonight coming to Teaneck was very important. So we want to really thank you very much for doing that. We know how busy your lives are now, and we thank you for that. And I'll start with Deborah. Deborah is a representative from the governor's office, my friend. She's the Deputy Chief of Staff, is that correct? And as soon as she heard about tonight's event, she said she absolutely wants to be there so that she could bring back the information to the governor. So we thank you, Deborah. So if you want to give a little something about you, we have some mics we're going to pass around, including this one.
I have a teacher's voice, so I don't know if you can hear me, but I want to be very, very brief. I just thank you all for the tremendous effort of coming out this evening for such an important meeting. I send you greetings on behalf of Governor Murphy, who just today spent about 45 minutes or an hour working with Jewish leaders from across the state in order to both hear the very real and deep concerns about security and safety, but also, I think just as important, about what is working within the community to combat anti-Semitism at its roots and at its core, so that ultimately, years from now, we're spending less time targeting targets and more time building unity within the community. So I'm here to learn, to listen, to take back what you're sharing this evening to inform our policy, but mostly I want to convey to you that you have the absolute commitment on the part of this governor to stand with you, to fight anti-Semitism, to make sure that there is safety and security, and to do whatever it takes to make sure that we all have the freedom to worship in safety and to be Jews as we are, free to express ourselves. So thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Deborah, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. All right, we'll start, I guess, in the back and work our way to the front. So Dina, you're first.
Hi, my name is Dina Seelenfreund. I'm the Regional Manager for CSS, Community Security Service. I see we have a lot of our CSS members in the audience, and we have our founder sitting in the back there as well, Adam Sager. Thank you all for coming out tonight. CSS is a nonprofit, non-denominational, apolitical organization. We're a community organization, and we're a resource for the community. We train community members to protect their synagogues, their houses of worship, and we take regular people like you and me. We teach them basic security skills. We offer trainings from basic all the way up to advanced. And these people become security experts, in effect. They form teams to protect their synagogues. And we work together with law enforcement, on many levels. Yesterday we protected the Siyum Hashas, which is an event that occurred at MetLife Stadium. There were 90,000 people there. CSS worked with law enforcement to scan and question vehicles. What we do best, our asset, is that we know our communities. We know what is right for our institution, for our houses of worship, what's out of place, what's normal, what's wrong, what's right for my house of worship might be wrong for yours. Everything is different, and we take that information from each CSS member and we use that as a force multiplier, and we are able to prevent any situations from occurring. So if anybody needs any, we're a model that works. We're proof that this model, the volunteer team model, works. It'll work in any house of worship, be it a synagogue, a mosque, a church. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. My name is Mustafa Rabah. I am the Chief of Police of Bergenfield PD. Mr. Katz said it right, that any attack on any house of worship is an attack on all houses of worship. We're here to let you know that we have procedures that we implement for safety, and this type of behavior will never be tolerated. I will be here throughout the night. If anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Tracy. Thank you, Ellie. My name is Tracy Zer. I'm a Bergen County freeholder. It is amazing to see this outpouring. It's also been amazing for me to celebrate Hanukkah in so many different communities, and to have, we recently, just last week, had our menorah lighting at the county building and at Van Son Park, and to stand with County Executive Jim Tedesco and all of my colleagues, reaffirming our commitment to light winning out over darkness, reaffirming our standing with our community and making sure that we are not only continuing to embrace all the diversity within Bergen County, but that we are standing strong, constantly in contact with our law enforcement, with our prosecutor, our sheriff, our local law enforcement officials to make sure that our community feels safe, but also that what we're doing on the Human Relations Council, what we're doing to continue dialogue among our community. I personally started a non-for-profit 3 years ago called We the People, which engages our children in interfaith community service. So we are having our MLK Day of Service coming up on January 20th at Bergen Community College, targeting 5th through 8th graders, and also with a teen leadership component. The whole point of which is to get our kids to know each other as people and not as labels, and to build bridges and make sure that our kids understand that we are all part of one community. And so on behalf of all of my colleagues on the Freeholder Board and all of us in county government, I just want to underscore our undying commitment and our solidarity with our community, and to making sure that we are all working towards a better 2020, and that we are all continuing to feel safe in our homes, in our houses of worship, in our places of celebration, in all of the things that we do together. So thank you so much for being out here tonight and being part of this very important conversation.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Feigenbaum. I work for Attorney General Gurbir Graywall, and there are a number of us here today that represent the Attorney General's office. So I thought I would say just briefly what I do, and then give you just a sense of broadly the folks who are here from the Attorney General's office. So, like I mentioned, I work as counsel to the Attorney General. I actually grew up right here in Teaneck and went to Beth Shalom growing up, and see a couple of folks I went to shul with while I was here. Libby Klein waving in the background. And I now work with the Attorney General on issues around firearm safety and gun violence, because all too often issues of bias and hate are inextricably interwoven with gun violence. And one of the Attorney General's priorities in his time as AG is to tackle gun violence and is to promote firearm safety across the state, whether it's episodes of mass shooting or bias incidents or the everyday shooting that some towns and cities in this state and in this country experience day in and day out. And we've done that by working with the governor to try to promote new policies and laws that help protect us from the spread of firearms, but also by bringing criminal cases that deal with illegal firearms trafficking into the state, and civil cases that help go after the companies that make it all too possible. So that's just one small piece of the broader array that you'll hear from us today. You'll also find out that at the Attorney General's office, we have our state police that are a division within the AG's office to work on tackling issues of interstate trafficking. We have folks in the Division on Civil Rights who deal with bias incidents, whether or not they're crimes, but simply reflect bias altogether. We have folks who work on victim services, who also protect us and protect the Jewish community and the folks here from our interfaith communities, regardless of the type of harm that they've experienced. And so whether it's state police or our Division of Criminal Justice prosecuting those cases, or the Division on Civil Rights dealing with bias and victim services, all across the AG's office there are folks that exist to be there to work with you and to partner with community organizations right here in Teaneck, across Bergen County, and across the state to help make a difference as we're facing this rise in bias, rise in hate, and rise in anti-Semitism. So with that, I will turn it back, and just know there's a lot of us you'll hear from at the AG's office that can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Aaron Scherzer. I'm the Chief of Strategic Initiatives at the New Jersey Division on Civil Rights. As Jeremy just mentioned, we're also within the Attorney General's office. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what we do in a second, but I'll start just by saying that obviously our work is more important now than ever before, as we've seen a rise in bias incidents around the state and also around the country. So what are we doing about it? My office was created in 1945 by the New Jersey legislature to prevent and eliminate bias, discrimination, and prejudice in New Jersey. And we enforce the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination, which is the first state civil rights statute in the country. It prohibits discrimination and harassment in employment, housing, places of public accommodation, and credit and contracting. But our civil rights investigations are different from criminal investigations. When someone sees a swastika painted on a locker room in school or a noose hanging by their workplace, state and local police look for the individual that did that act and work with prosecutors to see whether criminal charges are appropriate. But the Division on Civil Rights takes a different look to see whether or not there was a racially hostile work environment or religiously hostile school environment. And if so, what affirmative policy changes are necessary to prevent that action from occurring ever again. And we can take those affirmative policy steps either with an investigation that we hear from an individual complainant or what's called the director-initiated investigation. So we don't need to wait for someone to file a complaint with us. We can initiate an investigation based on what we hear from advocacy groups, from community organizations, from other state agencies, and even from the newspaper. And when we take those director-initiated investigations, we have a wide range of policy tools that we can use in order to ensure that, again, this no longer happens ever again. But we're also taking a proactive approach around the state. We're not just relying on investigations, either our own or ones that we hear from individual complainants. We're working directly with community groups, with advocacy organizations to start having the difficult conversations that are necessary to break down barriers and foster mutual love and respect. And one of the things that we're doing is the director of the Division on Civil Rights is the chair of the Interagency Task Force on Youth Bias, which the governor created in response to the rise of bias incidents around the state, and in particular the rise in youth bias. And we held 5 community listening sessions all around the state to hear from advocacy groups, from community members, from individuals about youth bias. And we're still accepting written comments on our website. We'll be writing a report later this year. Our website is njcivilrights.gov, so we'd love to hear written comments, further suggestions that you have about youth bias. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you very much. I just want to recognize our Township Attorney, John Shadanian, as well. All right.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dave Leonardis. I'm the Community and Training Outreach Liaison with the Division of Criminal Justice within the Attorney General's Office. And I work with each county prosecutor's community outreach liaisons and their bias crime liaisons, as well as the state and federal agencies that are represented. And we coordinate our efforts. This past year, the Attorney General in April of this year came out with updated guidelines on bias investigative standards. The guidelines are much more stringent than they have been in the past, and they clearly define that any type of a bias incident should be reported. So whether it's graffiti, whether it's name calling, whatever it is, should be reported to police. And there's a special report that they actually prepare and submit. We've also developed a system so that when that report is submitted, it goes to the respective county prosecutor's office, it goes to New Jersey State Police Uniform Crime Reporting Unit, it goes to Division of Criminal Justice Bias Crimes Unit, and it also goes to the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. They all look at it. Homeland Security and Preparedness checks it to make sure that there is no nexus to terrorism. So it's a pretty comprehensive system. In addition to that, at the end of every day, every one of those bias crime liaisons in each of the prosecutor's offices receives a copy of every bias crime that occurs, or bias incident, I should say, that occurs throughout New Jersey. So it's a comprehensive system where all of our partners work very close together. We've trained law enforcement, whether it's the bias crime liaisons or the uniform crime reporting folks in each local police department. And we also work with our partners with New Jersey Bias Crimes Officers Association and the county prosecutors' offices to train communities on, what is the difference between a bias incident and bias crime versus First Amendment rights, but most importantly, to encourage the community to come forward to report. We have a great system in place, but unless you report, it's not effective. So anyway, with that being said, thank you for inviting us here tonight, and I'll turn it back over.
Thank you, Dave. We appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Rubin. I'm the Attorney General's Special Advisor on Victim Services. So I work on policies and programs to support people post-victimization, making sure that we serve victims in all communities throughout New Jersey, including underserved communities. Tonight, I've got a lot of feelings going on as having survived my own bias incidents. I look back on my college experience where I was a victim of unrelenting bias crimes, and my college administration did nothing about it. And then I look at how the Attorney General takes this topic so seriously and gave me the task to ensure that we support victims not only of bias crimes but bias incidents. And I realize that we've come so far in recognizing that it's utterly unacceptable for any of us to live in fear because we're Jewish or anything else. And so it's just wonderful to be in a room full of folks who are all committed to creating safety here in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Senator.
Thank you, Ellie, and good evening. And thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing that. It speaks volumes to why we're all here. First and foremost, happy and healthy New Year to everyone. And as we celebrated Hanukkah last week, the last night, as Tracy alluded to, it was certainly clouded by acts of hatred and bias. Valerie Huddle, Assemblywoman, District 37, Chair of Homeland Security and Preparedness, and I will tell you that the members or the hosts tonight for this forum certainly put together a great panel of leaders when it comes to security and preparedness. And I took some notes because I don't remember the numbers of the legislation, but I just want to add this. As a legislator, we cannot legislate morality, but we can give you the tools to provide funding to hopefully prevent these heinous crimes. And it was only a year ago I stood with Governor Murphy. He signed two pieces of very important legislation, and I think it's worth noting. The first one was that he expanded the New Jersey nonprofit security grant pilot program to include funding for target hardening equipment and the hiring of security personnel. This program now provides additional resources to at-risk communities for a wider array of needs, and certainly you can request additional grants for that. And additionally, he signed into law increased security funding for non-public schools. This no doubt helps religious educational institutions provide the safety and security through staffing that their students need to feel secure. And this Monday coming up, I'm proud to sponsor a piece of legislation with Assemblyman Gary Scher, which would expand the state definition of terrorism, bringing it more in line with the realities of these heinous acts. Currently, right now, New Jersey designates that an individual is guilty of terrorism if he or she commits, attempts, conspires, or threatens to commit certain crimes. This legislation would include circumstances where an individual's goal is to influence or incite additional acts of terror, ensuring those looking to incite violence are held accountable by state law. These are certain things that we can applaud, certain things that we need to have implemented, and we could not get this done without the help of the administration and the panel here this evening. So I'm here for questions, I'm here for ideas, and I'm really indebted to this community for bringing this to light, especially in light of Hanukkah, because it was certainly clouded, and not just the few acts of terrorism, as we heard, the bias crimes in New Jersey, unfortunately, have gone up. So we need to do something. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Assemblywoman, and thank you for always being so responsive to our community meetings. We really appreciate it. Jerry.
Good evening, Jerry Doggan, Director of Community Relationship between the Jewish community and law enforcement. Thank you.
My good friend, Rabbi Abe Friedman, Teaneck Police Chaplain in Bergen County Sheriff.
Thank you, Ellie, for convening us tonight. So my name is Rabbi Abe Friedman. I serve as the Chief Chaplain for the State Police and also an advisor to Governor Murphy. And among other things, I have my good friend here, Chief from Teaneck, prosecutor, and the sheriff that I serve as a chaplain. Today we had a wonderful meeting. I just want to echo what Debbie said before. The governor convened leaders from throughout the state with the state police colonel, the AG's office, and the Homeland Security, and he's going to take major action throughout the state to deploy more state police resources to focus on hate crimes and bias crimes of all hate, not just the Jewish community, but unfortunately what's going on in New York and New Jersey, especially after Jersey City, the community lives in fear. I said today when we had the meeting with the governor, when I was a little child, I had to hear a story from my grandfather about the Holocaust, who he survived. And unfortunately, 30 years later, I never imagined that I'll have to have a conversation with my own child about hate crime and what's going on recently. So to sum it up, I think the state has great resources. Homeland Security is opening up a new cycle to apply for security cameras and other funds and grants. I'm not sure if we have someone here from Homeland Security that would talk more about it, as well as we're going to train officers, troopers, as well as first responders as to how, unfortunately, we have to get ready for the new norm. And if you have any concern, I'm here. I'm going to travel throughout the state on behalf of the governor to speak to various communities to see how they feel of the latest hate. Obviously, we live and the anxiety is high, and we have to just know that we have a great staff. The prosecutor's office has zero tolerance when it comes to hate crimes. So are the sheriff, the local chief, and everybody else. So I think it's a great team. We need to use and utilize what we have and just be vigilant. If you see something, say something. And thank you, Ellie, for convening us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our Chief of Police in Teaneck.
Good evening, Glenn O'Reilly, Police Chief here in Teaneck. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight.
Since 2001, the #1 priority of the Teaneck Police Department has been hometown security. We have not wavered from that mission in the last 19 years. We will continue to make that our #1 priority. The safety of our residents and our citizens is our #1 concern, our #1 job. Look forward to any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. My good friend, Rabbi Joel Friedman, who is the chaplain at the Sheriff Department and also at the Prosecutor's Office. And he's also, by the one, who helped me in a pitch today by making all these table tents. So if yours is missing,
It's
but if it's
misspelled.
here and it's spelled right, he gets it. I'll get the credit. All right.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm Rabbi Joel Friedman. I'm the Chief Chaplain for the Bergen County Sheriff's Office and as well the Chaplain for the Prosecutor's Office. I just want to start with the famous saying of Dr. Benjamin Franklin, who said, "If we fail to prepare, we prepare to fail." And this is why we're here today. We always have to prepare. We always need to be educated. We always need to know what's going on out there. We always need to know what law enforcement is doing, how they are doing the job. We as leaders, we have to be vigilant. We have to go out to our community, to every community, to our constituents, and say, if we see something, say something. If we see something is not acting right at your own synagogue, at your mosque, at your church, report it. If you see next to your house a suspicious individual, call 911. Let the law enforcement decide if this is right or wrong. As you know, what happened in Free Life Synagogue a couple months ago, 11 individuals who got killed for one reason. They went praying and because they were Jewish. What happened in Jersey City 2-3 weeks ago, innocent lives got lost. What happened just last week while a rabbi celebrated Hanukkah, in the middle of celebrating the candles and doing their event, someone came in with a knife. And this is a big shame. One of my children, to hear a question from my children, from my 8-year-old at night, and being asked, "Daddy, I'm afraid to go to the synagogue anymore. I rather want to play at a house instead of go pray." And it's very, very unfortunate. And this is why we have the law enforcement to help us out. After the Tree Life Synagogue in Jersey City, and as well, last week, the prosecutors and the sheriff's office and the local police department, they stepped up the patrol. They gave out the notices to their command to step up against, by the shuls, worship places, schools, shopping areas, and they deserve a big shout out for that. And as well, us leaders, we need to be educated. We need to go out and say, if we see something, say something. And don't be shy to report something, but let the law enforcement decide. So that's why we're here, and that's why we always have to prepare and be vigilant. God bless you. And I just want to conclude with that. The leadership from the state, all the way from the governor's office, our greatest attorney general, who lives here in this county, who's always on the lookout for the entire state. That speaks a lot, and we should be fortunate to have that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jason.
Good evening, Jason Shamus, the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey. Thank you for having me here this evening. A lot has been said, so I'm going to be short. I want to do another shout out for law enforcement and our elected officials, not just the ones here, but the ones in the crowd, who every single time respond and treat it so seriously. We cannot thank you enough. You deserve a big round of applause. I'm also doing announcements for cars being towed. I know who has those cars. They're pretty. Yes, I think you guys will be fine. You're not going to get towed. On a separate note, I want to remind everyone, or at least I want to tell you how I feel about where we live. So I'm raising a family of 2 here. I have an 11th grader and an 8th grader, and I feel like I could not have picked a better place to live. And at the end of the day, when I wake up every morning and I see what our county and our towns are like, I feel nothing but pride about who and what we are in collectivity. And we should not let people who want to ruin that, bring us down, because they represent such a small, small portion of who we are. And so we always have to stand tall and proud and remember how fortunate we really are. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Prosecutor Mark Masello, who's doing, by the way, a phenomenal job, and I just want to make note that when I mentioned some of my frustrations in the beginning about some of the Teaneck incidents that happened and why they were not, I guess, called a biased crime, he opened up his office, he brought us in, and he really tried to give us some information, what he could, so that we could help educate the community. So, Prosecutor Mark, thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank Ellie Katz. I want to thank Rabbi Friedman, Chief of Police, Dean Kaczynski, and I want to thank you all for coming here tonight. I want to thank them for organizing this event. I also want to point out that we have members from law enforcement, Homeland Security, a great showing from the Attorney General's office, Sheriff Curitin as well, who I work with daily, and it's just really a great showing of law enforcement here tonight. From my office, I just want to point out that we came here. I have 6 individuals who are all highly trained and who have been in law enforcement, many of them for over 25 years. I think together collectively, there's almost 200 years of law enforcement just from the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office here. I myself have been an attorney for 33 years. I was a Bergen County prosecutor in the 80s and 90s for 7 years. I was a criminal defense attorney for over 25 years. I have with me tonight my Chief of the Bias Unit, Verita Doni. She's here in the front row. I have with me my Chief of Detectives, Robert Anzalotti. He's been Chief for over 25 years. Deputy Chiefs Jay Love and Deputy Chief Gary Besh also both have been in law enforcement for over 20 years. I have my Chief of Community Affairs, Liz Rabine, who was an assistant prosecutor and has been an attorney for over 15 years, I believe. And also in the back, Captain McMorrow, again, also in law enforcement for over 25 years. So we're here tonight to show you how important we think this event is and to again answer any questions that you may have. My office investigates crimes and prosecutes crimes. We also then investigate and lend support to the locals and prosecute the crimes that the locals investigate and that result in arrests. My office employs approximately 270 individuals, 150 detectives, 60 assistant prosecutors, which are lawyers that go to court every day and prosecute crimes. We also have a support staff of almost 100. So that's a little bit of what we do and a little bit of who we are. I came here tonight with really thinking about what message that I wanted to give to you tonight, and I really have 2 messages. The first message I have is that we in law enforcement are prepared. I want you to come away tonight feeling that in Bergen County, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's department, the attorney general's office, the local police are doing everything in their power day in and day out to think about the reason why we're here tonight, the issues that are confronting us tonight. We are prepared, we are vigilant, and our concerns are your concerns. That is what we do day in and day out, and as the Rabbi had mentioned, in light of recent events and in light of some of the holidays, we stepped up our SWAT patrols. We employ a SWAT unit. We train our SWAT unit daily. SWAT teams are, again, gathered from local departments throughout the county, but we have 2 roving SWAT teams that patrol Bergen County every day, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and we have stepped up the patrols in and around schools and houses of worship. We have a rapid deployment team that is 60 strong, again made up of local police officers, a force multiplier that will respond to any incident that may arise when the local police department calls for it. Again, it's trained every day and very, very highly trained individuals. And again, these individuals are trained to respond to situations at schools and houses of worship. Last year, in 2019, our Intel unit conducted 69 safety assessments of schools and houses of worship. And again, that will continue this year. And finally, our local police are highly trained, well-trained by our department and through the police academy. And also, in speaking with the police chiefs, I asked, and I know that they have asked that their police officers be informed and educated with regard to their communities, their towns, and the special interest groups in their towns, and specifically the customs and traditions of the Jewish community. So that's what we're doing on the side of law enforcement, to be prepared to address any event that may occur. Secondly, the other thing that I was thinking about, the second message, is that there must be communication between law enforcement and the residents. Events like this are so helpful. It brings us together, and we can share ideas, and we can partner together. We in law enforcement are proactive, but we also are reactive. When you have a complaint or a tip, we react to it. When the police calls, we react to it. We investigate and we prosecute. But we are also proactive. We have a robust counterintelligence and intel unit. Our unit acts daily on tips, information, sources from social media and sources that we have, and this information is shared with local, state, and federal authorities. So we are proactive, we are reactive, but we cannot do this without your help. As others have stated, your eyes and ears are important to us. If you see something, please say something. Please do not hesitate to call your police. All of you in the room tonight, I ask that you make contact with your local police departments, through your community leaders, through your faith leaders. Have a person that you know, a person that you can call in the event that there is an emergency or in the event that there is something suspicious. Do not hesitate to call on your police departments. I think if we do all these things, we will have a happy and safe and healthy new year. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Just have a quick announcement about some of the vehicles that are blocking the deliveries at Stop and Shop. We don't want to slow down their deliveries. You have 4 vehicles.
Okay, so the vehicles here are the SSB82P is the license. If you want, we can move it for you here at Rain. I don't know if there's someone here who has that. Tahoe, a Ford Explorer, a Hyundai Sun, I think it's a Nissan, and a Honda that are parked right across the street. We can move it for you. If not,
we will valet tonight. Okay, Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jen Davenport. I'm the First Assistant Attorney General, and the Attorney General regrets that he could not be here tonight. He is out of state in California. I think if he's in a state that was close, he would have been here tonight with you. But it takes a half a dozen of us to replace him. So I brought everybody with me, and you haven't even heard from all of us yet. So I let them talk about the different divisions, and I think one of the reasons that we wanted to be here was that you knew all the different divisions within our department that really do focus on this. And our main goal, or our common mission, is of course protecting public safety, but in different ways. So without repeating any of that, I just want to share 2 things that I think really haven't been mentioned. The first, by way of I will never know what many of you feel, the fear and the terror and everyday feeling that you are a victim or are going to be a victim. And I know that that is not a new sentiment, and I know that anti-Semitism is not new. But certainly the events over the last month have heightened those feelings. And I will not know what that feels like, but I can only try to imagine, and I can hear from the community and in all the meetings we have to do the work that we are doing every day to protect you. And I hope that it gives you some solace, and prosecutors mentioned that this is not new for us to come together to work across departments, across county, state, and even our federal partners. It's not even the first time today that we've done it. So I hope that that gives you some comfort to know that all of these things that are happening are not happening just in the last month, but over the course of, our intelligence and sharing environment, whether it be through the state police and the JTTF and OHSP, and like I said, all 21 counties across the state, sharing information and sharing intelligence and making sure that we can keep those lines of communication open so that all is done. And the second part of that is that reporting part that Dave mentioned, and making sure that we give that to everybody who needs to know that information. It goes across. So reporting even to one place, everyone will have it.
And one point on that I think is very important is for social media as well. You may think it's, you know, smaller, or you may see something on social media, it may not be some interaction you've had in person, but that's very important to report also. And, you know, I don't have to tell you that hateful comments, you know, become hateful acts, you know, all too often, and it's very important for us to take a look at that, and we're taking a hard look at what we can do there as well. But I just want to make sure that that line is open as well for anything that you see on social media, to please report that through either the county or your local municipality, or whoever it is. It will get to the right people, and we will do what we can to make sure that it's investigated. So thanks very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. All right, Sheriff Curtin, one of the best sheriffs in the country. By the way, I called him up. I said to him, we only put this together on Monday, right? This is the crowd. I called him up. I said, what are you doing Thursday night? He goes, I have this event, that event, this event, that event. I said, oh, I wanted to have a community safety event. I guess, all right, I guess I'm going to your community safety event. Thank you very much, Sheriff.
Thank you. Good evening, how you doing? Though it's a great opportunity to come here, it's unfortunate that we have to come here and talk about the unfortunate things, I like that word, that happen in our various communities. As the prosecutors alluded to and everybody on the dais, if you haven't noticed, we have a very robust law enforcement community, and I think we cover all aspects. However, that is more so centered on the line of communication we bear with one another. Whatever you see, you have to let us know. And I'm pretty sure, as again, the individual you see lined up here and the resources available, we will address the concerns. Now, I'm going to go on a personal note about me. All right. I have 25 years of law enforcement in Inglewood. During my 25 years, some may know or may not know, I was the president of the NAACP before I became the elected sheriff. And during that time, I have dealt with a lot of anti-Semitic issues that happened in Bergen County. I recall 2011, the bombing of the synagogue and as well as the rabbi's house in Rutherford. And I recall us having that night of healing, sitting at the step. And it was great to see us all come together to address the concerns in our community. Though it was unfortunate, we came to realize the significance of us taking on our community and ridding ourselves of that type of negativity. So, getting back to the responsibility now of the Sheriff's Office, yes, we are the force multipliers. We have a great relationship with our Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, have a great relationship with the Police Chiefs Association throughout Bergen County, and with a mere phone call, we pretty much work together to get what we need to get things done. I've also had a great relationship with a young man named Jason Smith. I used to be was I an honorary member? I was an honorary member of the Northern Jewish Federation. But I kind of understand, and we've had these discussions numerous times about what the Jewish community face. If I may, because I don't know if Ellie will give me a chance to continue on. Okay? Now, again, being a social justice active at one point in my life, and we all know Dr. Martin Luther King, but he said something I think we all relates to, and that's darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Let us all meet, and let us always meet each other with a smile, for the smile is the beginning of love. Only way we can get this done, we have to do it collectively.
Thank you very much, Sheriff. Congressman Gottheimer.
Good evening. I've heard there have been a few speeches, so I apologize. I'll keep it very brief. I'm beyond grateful to be joined by such a group of esteemed people who spend their waking hours nearly every single day worrying about making sure that we are safe. So I just want to thank law enforcement. Obviously, the sheriff does such a remarkable job, but we have a lot of people from EMS and firefighters and law enforcement and police. I just want to give them a very big round of applause for always getting involved. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for organizing this, and I will not try to thank all the elected officials here because we'll be here for 3 hours, but I want to thank all of our esteemed local officials who are here and the chiefs. We are obviously living in tumultuous times in our country, and the last weeks have been particularly trying for so many people in our broader community. But these numbers of just the last weeks are just emblematic of a larger problem that's going on, not just against people of my faith and against Jewish people, but also against so many communities. The hatred in our country right now, which is spilling over and bubbling over, is really, I think, the number one thing we must address as a country. And remembering that before any party or before any faith, we are Americans. And I believe if we get back to that simple principle, and I think we should all be filled with such pride, and I'm glad the lights came on, because it's symbolic. You know, it said in Scripture, may the Lord answer you when you are in distress. And I think now our community is answering the call, and when we come together like this, we remember actually what should come first, and that we have to look out for one another. So, whether you're talking about the 1,879 attacks against Jews and Jewish institutions in 2018, the third highest year on record since the ADL started tracking those numbers. By the way, New Jersey, third highest in the country. Not exactly something that we put on bumper stickers promoting our state, but it just reminds us that we have work to do. But I believe that if we come together and do more of this, and I really praise our community for doing it here, we will overcome the evil and the darkness, as the sheriff just said so aptly. Three things that on the grant front that Ellie asked me to cover, which I think are important. One, there are investments available of dollars we're clawing back from the federal government to help protect our communities. Because I believe we must do a lot to protect the safety and security of our houses of worship and our schools. Because if we don't protect our schools, if we don't protect our houses of worship of all faiths, then we could not feel as safe as we should. The New Jersey Office of Homeland Security Preparedness and many faith leaders have worked so closely with my office on nonprofit security grants, which helped invest in security enhancements like barriers and screening tools, safety improvements, and preparedness training. The 5th District of Jersey, my district that I represent, the district that you live in and hire me to help you with, has clawed back more than $2.9 million from Washington through the program since 2016. By the way, this is some of the highest in the country because we have so many institutions of faith and because our institutions are actually taking the time to apply for these resources. You should ask your shuls or your churches or your mosques to make sure that they apply for these security dollars, and then my job is to help fight for them. It's very, very important to protect our communities. And we just passed more investment in the end of the year to put more toward this because these numbers and these threats have gotten so high as we've seen in these last weeks. Also, the Never Again Education Act, legislation to teach children about the Holocaust, but also other forms of hate. So important, right? Never forget. If we forget, it's very quick to actually start to hate again if we don't remember our past. So I think it's essential that we make sure that we teach our children about our past. We must not forget to make sure that we always remember and do everything we can to protect our communities. Lastly, there are several bills and legislation which I encourage you to help promote to discourage hate. Now, it's not something you legislate, it's not an issue that you could just pass a law and stop. But what you can do is make sure that in our institutions of learning and then in our communities, we have access to the information to make sure that we do everything humanly possible to pass on the teachings to our children and to others about putting love over hate. So with that, I will turn it back. But please know that my door is always open, just like every elected official in the room here. I know how much they care. I know every rabbi cares, and also that every member of law enforcement who's here, as the door is open as well, and we're all very, very grateful. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Just one quick announcement. We're down to one last vehicle, L21HKG. It's a Hyundai? Right outside. Okay. And I'd just like to recognize our freeholders, Steve Tonelli and Mary Amorosa, who are in the back as well. Literally minutes after the incident at the bagel shop on Christmas Day here in Teaneck, I got a call on Christmas Day from the Office of Homeland Security in New Jersey. Patrick Rigby called me and said, "How can we help Teaneck?" And I want to just recognize you and thank you so much for coming tonight, Patrick.
Thank you. Good evening. I want to start by thanking our law enforcement partners here in the room. It's for many of you. Our colleagues Jen mentioned and the chiefs that we're here for you. We see a lot of hate in the community. We're talking about reporting, but someone did allude to the fact that it's been a long week for us in law enforcement. In fact, it's been a long several weeks in law enforcement. And what I can tell you is that we're just working harder. We want to know more. We want over-reporting. We want you to share this information with us because, as Jen alluded to, we're going to share this information across all levels of government, from local, county, state, and our federal partners here tonight. My name is Patrick Rigby. I'm the Chief of Staff for New Jersey's Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. I report to Director Jared Maples. He's a cabinet member of Governor Murphy's. As Deb Kornabachia alluded to, we were attending an event this afternoon with the governor, and we heard some very candid and positive feedback from our partners. And it just made us step back and think about all the good work that we're doing here in the community, and how can we do more? So there's three basic takeaways. As the former Director of Communications for my office, hearing the words tonight down the line about see something, say something could not make me prouder. There's no marketing at MetLife Stadium. There's no campaign on buses or enough social media ads that we can purchase as a state than to hear it from the leaders themselves here tonight. So please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Our biggest takeaway too is for you, the community leaders. We talked about grant money. You heard the congressman mention it. You heard the assemblywoman who's been a big advocate of our office in terms of getting those dollars to out into the community. The Nonprofit Security Grant Program, that's the federal stream that Congressman Gottheimer talked about, as well as the Nonprofit Security Grant Pilot Program, which Assemblywoman Huddle alluded to. These applications will be coming up, and the deadlines will be in May and April, coming up respectively. We'll be hosting 3 training sessions throughout the state, North, Central, and South. For more information about Interfaith Houses of Worship, you can visit njohsp.gov. Put in those applications, get those assessments completed, and we'll be sure to get those dollars out to your community. So thank you again, Ellie. Thank you again for everyone on our dais here today, and thank you all for coming out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. How you doing? My name is Weldon Powell. I'm Chief of Detectives of the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice out of the New Jersey State's Attorney General's Office. Rabbi Abe and Rabbi Joel both heard me say this before. Your concerns are our concerns. Your priorities are our priorities, and we truly mean it. I speak for everyone up here when I say that. The common theme this evening has been report, report, report. Just to put it in basic terms, New Jersey has one of the most elaborate bias incident reporting systems in the nation. And what that system is, in basic terms, it's our early warning system. It's our radar system. It lets us know where to apply our resources, who's on our radar system, who has a propensity to move towards violence, and it gives us a good picture of what's out there. So it's very important to us. But I guess the most important part of that system is not in Trenton. It sits out here in the audience. It's you. It's everybody out here. So please, if you don't carry anything else out of here this evening, please report. It is our radar system. And that's all I have to say. I'm just going to be brief. I think we have one more person, and that's it.
Thank you. Actually, now we got a lot of questions.
Good evening. My name is Rob Conrad. I'm a supervisory special agent with the FBI Newark Field Division Counterterrorism Branch. Mr. Katz, Rabbi Freeman, thank you for having me here tonight. I have the ability to travel all around the country with the FBI, and I can tell you right now, we have the best state and local law enforcement in the country. I work with them every day in the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and they are extremely squared away. Have confidence with them. The FBI is the federal agency for violations of the civil rights statutes and terrorism. Again, we can't do this without our state and local partners. We work together every day, and we will continue to investigate every lead. We will turn over every rock, and we have to to get to the bottom of any crime. Right now, there's people working literally 24/7 in New York and New Jersey with our state and local partners. So let it be known that we have the best in the country around here, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much. We assembled an all-star team, right? Let's give it up for the panel once again. Now I'm going to call Mark Schwartz up. He's got the list of questions. When your name is called, if you could just stand up, and Mark's going to speak for you.
Well, that's not. Okay, I'm actually not going to call the individual people up because I have about 35 questions, and there's only about 5 different questions. A lot of people ask the same questions throughout the audience, which showed that it was some very hot topics. They're very hot topics, so we may want to lock the door so the panel doesn't leave without answering it. So I'm going to jump right in, and I apologize if I didn't get to all the questions. And I'll read some that may be similar to what you asked, but I'll skip yours because it's the topic. The first question, it's addressed to the prosecutor and the police chief, or whoever else wants to step in. The two incidents that Ellie referred to appear to be biased crimes, but were not charged as such. Yet no explanation was ever given to the community why this was the case. There would be less unease in the community if we had been told with specificity what facts the investigations uncovered and why those facts did not support biased charges. Would you please commit yourself to provide us that information?
Hello. So, with regard to the two incidents, as Ellie stated, we did meet with Ellie, we met with Dean, we met with the chief. The incidents were investigated by the Teaneck Police Department, they were investigated by our office. The matters were discussed in our office. And again, these are decisions that are made on a daily basis with regard to individuals in my office, with regard to input from the local police as well, and matters were also referred to the Attorney General as well for review. What I can tell you is based on, it was basically a legal decision with regard to both of these incidents, based on the facts and circumstances, based on the investigations, based on the individuals involved. It was our determination that these matters did not rise to the level under the statutes of the state of New Jersey, which call for knowing, purposeful, and targeting of individuals. That these matters did not rise to the level of
Why not?
Answer the
question. What is the level?
You didn't answer the question.
Okay, we can't have that type of conversation. We have to be respectful. We're lucky to have this type of caliber of panelists. Some of the things, obviously, they're not going to disclose here. You come up afterwards and privately talk with them, but if I can ask, please don't call out, okay? If you don't hear the answer that you want to hear after the event, come forward. But we're not having one of these type of community meetings.
It was my question.
Okay.
And my question was, with specificity, to tell the community, not to tell the leader. There's unease in the community, and simply saying that it's a legal decision, that doesn't tell us why. We are an intelligent, sophisticated community. I've been a litigator for 46 years. I understand legal issues. I understand that when you investigate matters, facts change. And because of changed facts, you reach different conclusions. But you haven't told us why. You haven't explained it to us. All we have been told to explain it to us. There was an article in today's Suburbanite about it, and again, it was generalities. The unease will be lifted if you're specific. If you give us answers saying that there are legal reasons, that doesn't alleviate the unease in the community, and all of the good things that have been said here today. And there have been a lot of good things said here today. But if you don't treat us as adults, treat us as the sophisticated, intelligent people that we are, and tell us what's happening, you're not doing your job.
So, sir, I did not state to you that it was basically simply based on legal reasons. It was based on the investigation as well. We felt that the facts of both investigations did not rise to the level of bias crime because we felt that the individuals in these cases did not target a person of a specific race, religion, or culture, or diversity, based on the facts of the case. There were individuals here that did not go to these locations for a specific purpose of committing a crime against a certain individual or community or race or religious group. These were random events based on our investigation, based on our reading of the statute. Again, because you have to understand, you indicated you're a litigator. These go hand in hand. It's the facts, the investigation, what we gleaned from the investigation, what we felt we can prove at trial, and based on the statute as well, a reading of the both together. These individuals, and again, these matters are pending. Charges were filed. Charges are pending in other courts. They did not rise to the level of a biased crime, but individuals were charged, and the charges are pending. I really cannot comment on the guilt or the innocence of the individuals. What I can tell you is, based on the facts of the case, we felt that these individuals did not target a certain portion of the population under the statute, which would call for race, religion, or an ethnic group for the purpose of committing a crime. It was, for lack of a better word, it was a random event. Both incidents were random events. They were incidents where the individual did not have the predetermination or the premeditation to commit an offense against a person of a certain community or population. I have with me my bias crime chief, Vered Adoni, who reviewed these cases. The matters were reviewed with the Attorney General as well, the first assistant in my office, the chief of police in my office, and the chief of TNET. Here. Vered.
I just want to explain a few things about the bias crime statute, and perhaps it will shed some understanding. When we say that something is deemed bias incidents are not bias crimes. That confuses the community, and that is something that everybody has to understand. A person is guilty of a bias crime when he goes to a place or he targets an individual for no other reason but for the person's religion or race, ethnicity. In these cases, our investigation revealed that the individual that committed the acts that they committed, while wrong, they did not go and target the Jewish community. They didn't do it. It was incident to the affairs that occurred at the places that they went to. The kosher bagel. Clearly, an event happened there, an act by an individual happened there. We deemed it bias incident. The fact that it was a bias incident does not mean it's a bias crime that a person can be charged. When a person yells derogatory words against a specific race or religion, it does not automatically make it a bias crime. And we have to make a distinction here. We can't go out and charge individuals for what they say and only for what they say. Incident to acts. Now, you do have to understand that we have victims, and sometimes the victims are not cooperative, and if the victims are not willing to cooperate with investigation, that hinders our investigation as well. But here, we've investigated both incidents, and we determined that the individuals in question did not specifically target the Jewish community. They did what they did wrongful acts, but they did not do it with a specific motive of going out, selecting Jewish people, and committing the acts. And I know it's hard to swallow in this type of a climate, in this type of temperature where we know that acts of bias crimes are committed. And yes, the acts in Rockland and Jersey City were bias crimes, but we can't go in the slippery slope where we are going to charge people because they say derogatory comments that offend us. And unfortunately, offending comments are all over the place. But that's not why, and that's why how we charge. We have to abide by our laws, and our laws are very clear. Bias incidents are not necessarily biased crimes.
Thank you very much, and I think I kind of alluded to that at the beginning where I said, maybe the issue is not in the law enforcement community, the issue is in the laws. And they're enforcing the laws that are on the books, and we are fortunate to be represented, if you haven't taken note, by local here, county, state, federal, and maybe it's the laws that have to be reviewed and give more teeth to the law enforcement community. It's my feeling, and it's just my feeling. If someone throws a Molotov cocktail in 2 houses, and the 3rd house is a house of worship, that should be a bias crime. Just because they were just going for the houses, the 3rd house is a house of worship, and it should be protected, and there should be stricter laws with that. So that's just my personal feeling. All right, let's keep it to Mark Schwartz with the questions.
The next question has been asked 11 times. And it's the opposite of stricter laws. The question, I'll read one of them that gets the general concept. Ellie, you showed a video at the opening of the symposium. Hundreds of lives were saved because law-abiding citizens were armed and responded. It is nearly impossible to get a concealed weapon permit in New Jersey. I did say a lot to Doris. How can we get law-abiding citizens more carry permits so we can better protect our community?
Who wants that one?
Just grant them. Don't have to answer, just grant them.
So the state law, thank you. State law dictates how firearms permits are issued, particularly when it's a permit to carry. So what I would tell you to do is refer to state law what the laws are for that.
May issue. It starts with that.
So I'll speak briefly for the AG's office, although I want to qualify exactly like the chief just said. This is a question of state law, so the folks in here in law enforcement enforce the law. We're going to keep enforcing the law as written. If folks have concern about how the public carry law is written, that's a conversation to have with legislators.
Perhaps the Assemblywoman can answer the question.
I'm sorry, please.
She left, of course. Got her political part in and left.
So I just wanted to note, it is obviously, some people mentioned something about a may carry state. There are different ways in which different states can have different regimes. You can have shall carry, you can have may carry. New Jersey is one of a number of states that has a may permit, a may carry system, which means you can get a concealed carry permit, but you have to show particular threats to safety that justify why you would want a permit. That's been a law that's been upheld by courts across the country, and so that's the sort of thing you would need to show to your local law enforcement in order to get a permit. I wanted to say separately, because I know this came up and when I was speaking earlier, issues around gun violence. Obviously some of them can grow very political and very sensitive, and I understand that there are going to be folks in this room right here that have very different views about the best way to handle certain aspects of the Second Amendment, firearm safety, public safety, etc. I think there's one thing we can all agree on that I know folks across the ideological spectrum all feel, which is that at a minimum there are certain requirements that we all need to have to protect us from felons in possession or domestic abusers in possession or a range of individuals who should not have access to guns, including people who are prepared to commit hate crimes or hoping to use those guns in that way. And so regardless of folks' feelings about particular aspects around firearm safety, the folks up here, especially whether it's state police, OHSP, criminal justice, Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, Bergen County Sheriff's Office, everyone up here is committed to trying to keep guns out of the hands of folks who we all agree should not have them, whether it's an assault weapon or a rifle or anything like that, to handle public safety in that way. So I understand there will be sensitive issues about how the laws are written in New Jersey, but I just wanted to say I think it's important for us to recognize whether it's dealing with straw purchasers or illegal trafficking into our cities or what have you, there are key issues we all agree on as violence issues as opposed to Second Amendment issues. And I sort of appreciate the aspects where we can agree and move forward, because I think a lot of those kinds of gun violence issues are the kind that speak to a community right now that is reeling from acts of hate, that is terrified of future acts of hate, and that live with the consequences of gun violence. So we will have fights, folks will have fights that are political in nature, or that turn to the courts. But there are some issues I think we all need to move forward together as law enforcement, as the Jewish community, as interfaith communities, as our elected officials up here, all working together on those issues.
Anyone else on the panel want to answer? Okay.
We heard about the rules, we heard about the initial step. Who approves this carrier permit? You know, I think the numbers are very low, and it's 11 questions. I don't want to go through all of them. There's a step missing. I know the police chief does not have. It goes through you. You're part of the answer.
Right. So if you're a resident of Teaneck and you want to apply for a carrier permit, you would do that through the Teaneck Police Department. I'll review it. If I feel it's appropriate, I'll approve it. Then it's forwarded to a Superior Court judge, who ultimately will decide whether or not that permit to carry a weapon is issued. That is the process of how it works. Okay?
What about a rifle?
I know there's been a heavy demand for permits. I know the department's been working on that. I know we just had some more resources allocated to that. And I'm going to get very personal right now. I went through that process. It is a very thorough process, and against the gun safety, it is thorough. The registration, the off-site fingerprinting. I'm not concerned about that violence because of that thoroughness. But the first step would be the Teaneck Police Department. So please.
So if you're applying for a permit to carry, that still is the paper version. But if you're just applying for a permit to purchase a weapon or to get a firearms ID card, you can do that online through the NJ Forest system. NJ Forest, F-A-R-S.
Okay. The next question's been asked 4 times. It's a very new question. It's perfect for the panel up there, and it's part of what everyone said. If you see something, say something. I'll read a few of them. What is being currently done to protect our schools and other public areas such as supermarkets? Can street cameras be added along Cedar Lane and West Englewood Avenue, which is a high volume of stores and restaurants? Is there a active shooter panic button that can be put into stores or temples? And I believe we actually have for some houses of worship. And is armed security guards for these stores, similar to other countries like such as Israel, is that the answer?
All right, there's a lot of parts to that question. Patrick, you want to take it?
We might break that down again, so we'll go step by step. So in terms of, I'll take the Department of Education bid first. So we do quite a bit with the Department of Education when it comes to active shooter drills. This is something we do in conjunction with the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's office, local chiefs of police. We want to make sure that when that day, or if that day happens, we make sure that children are prepared, educators are prepared, and also the buildings are hardened to the extent that we can. And again, that really gets to the preparedness piece of what we do. We've talked about cameras at crossroads and streets and supermarkets. This is something, again, we work with the prosecutor's office and the chief of police. For us, it's that see something, say something nexus. So if there's a nexus to terrorism, that's really where our office is getting involved. Now, if something is reported to our office, we talked about biased crimes and incidents, that's immediately shared and referred to the Attorney General's office. They have an entire division dedicated to biased crime reporting. Crime will be handled on the local, county, state, and federal levels appropriately. So that's 2 for 2. What else do we have? There is another element.
So in terms of, and I guess it goes to the grant money, I know that, and I'll ask the question, and we've had, in many of the houses of worship, have participated in these symposiums. We've went out, we've gotten the grant money, and I know many temples have the blue pull buttons, which basically call for police assistance. What about having those in, I guess schools may have, but what about in supermarkets? What about in stores? What is the ability for a store owner to rapidly call for assistance, whether or not be the Sammy's incidents, whether it be the Jersey City incident, the Muncie incident in our town would have a pull button. So I'm not sure who that goes to, but...
Sure, I mean, from a Homeland Security standpoint, most people in this room have a panic button. It's called your cell phone, 911, right? If you're unable to use it, I think getting to a blue button is great. But I tell you, in my experience, I can tell you, we get those incidents and those calls quite frequently. They're coming from cell phones. So if you're in a store, it doesn't matter if you're in a mass gathering area. We talked about MetLife Stadium. We talked about hometown security on Main Street. Wherever you are, if there's an incident, use your cell phone. And I hate to harp back, but reporting suspicious activity, there is no better defense against when we're talking about terrorism or crimes against your community than the people sitting in this audience. And I say that because I've been privy to the top techniques from the FBI, ATF, our state police. These are the best of the best units out there. And I think they will all tell you that the best defense is the community. Because you know what's not right. You get that sense that something just stands out. You're walking to the grocery mart every day. You're walking to your house of worship every day on a regular basis. You're taking your children to school. If something seems off, you're hearing it from everyone here on the stage, we want to know about it. And you can do that reporting to our office. It's 1-800-4-SAFE-NJ, or you can do it by reporting at tips@njohsp.gov, or you can visit our website, or simply call 911, and that's probably talked about that blue panic button. It's multi-purpose. Let us know about it. Everyone here, again, you're our best line of defense. So thank you very much. I don't think that's it.
Yes, I think you got it. I'll go to the next question, which is well,
before you do, is there anyone else that wants to respond to that?
There were some temples that we had some prior symposiums that got some money. There was a question about this survey that we mentioned, and I know my temples and schools participated in it. You know, if you have more information on that survey for temples that have not? The initial survey, is that the prosecutor's? I think there's a prosecutor's office as well.
Also, I think there's some houses of worship, whether it's in Teaneck or in the county, that have never had a security survey done. And the question is, who do they speak to get a security survey?
Team effort here, so I'm going to hand it off to the prosecutor's office. Has somebody dedicated to this, and all that information is shared up to us in terms of grant funding. So I'm going to go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So if your house of worship would like a security survey, simply contact the Teaneck Police Department, ask for Lieutenant Christopher Kirschner. He is our coordinator for it. He'll coordinate with the prosecutor's office to have that done. That's Christopher Kirschner. Call 201-837-2600. That's our main number. Ask for community policing, Lieutenant Kirschner. Okay? And then meeting, come up and see me at the end, and I'll give you his name and number. Happy to speak with you. Thank you, Chief.
After you call the Teaneck Police Department, they will refer, I believe they will refer you to or work with Detective William Stallone of our Intel unit. Our Intel unit conducted 69 safety assessments last year, and we will continue to conduct them this year as we get the calls from the local police departments.
So my very older colleague, Mary Morris, who sits on the prosecutor's office, Safe School Task Force, just to give that a shout out. That is something that's not only available to our public schools, it's also available to our parochial schools. And we want to make sure that you can, there is grant money, grant funding that is available both in Homeland Security that my kids' Jewish Day School took advantage of, but also through state grant and funding that can harden resources, both from a physical infrastructure, but also from a panic button perspective too. So that is another resource you can take advantage of. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Okay.
I just want to recognize former Teaneck Police Chief Robert Wilson in the back there, who's also the Metro West. Thank you very much.
Okay. Here's another question that actually echoed a lot what I read online, another sensitive question, so I apologize and keep the doors locked. At the Sammy's incident, would I have been liable, for example, if I sprayed mace in his face, I'll tone this down, or attacked him back?
Okay, who wants that one?
And I think the premise was, what I read a lot on social media, was that people ran for the door. Well, I didn't jump, but what's attack? What is self-defense? What isn't self-defense? The exact line says, or if I stabbed him. That was the exact line. I'm not trying to incite that. I think the question was more of, Where are we in New Jersey with self-defense? What can we, can't do in a situation that happened at Sandy's, for example?
Is the question, are we allowed to carry mace as civilians?
Pepper spray. What you don't want to do is find out that you attacked the perpetrator.
To narrow it down, because obviously every single incident lends itself to different sets of scenarios, and that's how they judge it. But the question maybe is, people feel right now helpless, right? We talked about the gun laws in the state of New Jersey and how restrictive they are. What is it that they can carry that can give them that sense of comfort, that sense of empowerment, so that they're not sitting ducks, you know? Who wants to take that one?
You're asking now self-defense issues. So again, it's a fact-sensitive question. It's a case-by-case question. Listen, you certainly have the right to defend yourself. It certainly have the right to protect yourself when being attacked. But it's a sensitive question with regard to what can I carry to use in self-defense. So the general rule is you can use the force against you that is being used against yourself. Pepper spray, you want to carry pepper spray, you want to protect yourself if someone is attacking you. Again, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. If it's proven that you're being attacked or you're being the victim of some type of crime, you certainly can defend yourself. Again, I would reach my cell phone, call 911. I would sort of enlist the aid of bystanders, but I would not take it upon myself to carry a weapon that is a legal weapon. So, if you want to ask the chief more specifically, my response is you certainly should protect yourself, but it's a case-by-case question, it's a hypothetical question, so that's really the answer to that.
Thank you. And by the way, just to note, the perpetrator in the case of the bagel store fled the scene and then went on to harass a young student on the way to school, and his weapon of response was his cell phone, and that's how they apprehended him. So he could have taken on the fight. He was certainly goaded to take on the fight, but he didn't take on the fight. He picked up the phone and dialed 911, and that's how they caught him. Is that correct?
There's a few questions here which I guess the question is why we're not prepared to answer the question, and it's something that you and I briefly discussed about having another seminar in about 7-8 weeks, more geared towards mental health. And we've got a great lineup up here, and I'll ask the question, and I don't know if anyone can answer it, and that's what we'll have to set up another symposium for. So I'll answer it and see if there is an answer, I'll ask it and see if there's an answer. Where is the mental health address of the safety issue? Not one person on the panel is from a mental health perspective. Why is that? And I'll tie that into the fact that it was deemed, I believe, necessary or felt that one of the outcomes was that there was a mental health issue with potentially the perpetrator at the Sammy's incident. So I don't know if we have anyone who can answer that question here, and if not, that's something, our takeaway that we discussed by doing another springtime event.
What's the exact question that you're asking as far as why is somebody who doesn't deal with mental health on the panel?
Or is there someone that can answer that? Maybe there is, because apparently what we're hearing about again in Rockland and in Sammy's was it's a mental health issue, and we're more here on the legal issue. So
Deborah's going to take that.
So I'll just say briefly that at the state level, we're very cognizant of the need to address the causes of hate crimes for the various reasons that they're happening. Right, in Ocean County, it may be white supremacists. In other areas, it might be people who are suffering from mental illness. One of the things that the governor has asked us in the whole of government approach, we're working very intensely with the DOE, the Department of Education, on guidance K-12 with higher education. We are also working with DHS, Human Services, and DOH Health to identify where our mental health services need to be better targeted and where we need to support people who might or might not report people who are suffering from mental illness making threats and who may or may not be taking those threats to see something, say something as seriously as they need to. So we're working both at the healthcare level, at the reporting level, to take this as a whole of government approach. So it's something that we are looking at. It's not an easy solution, but we are acutely aware of the need that is part of the current issue that we have to address.
And also to add here in Bergen County,
mental health has definitely been a priority. We've increased funding, the freeholders have increased funding to mental health services within the county every single year since I've been on the board. But more importantly, we are engaging in things like mental health first aid training, which gives people throughout the community the tools to learn how to de-escalate situations where they're seeing individuals in mental health distress. We're actually one of our high schools in Fort Lee was one of 30 in the entire country to launch a teen mental health first aid training component as well, giving our teenagers the tools to act as first responders in this way, to learn how to de-escalate aggravating mental health situations. So we have a lot of tools that we're putting into place. We have a very vibrant tapestry of services. The key is connecting those individuals. We proclaimed ourselves as stigma-free in Bergen County, one of the first counties in the state to do so. But really what you do with that is the next step. And so it's making sure that people understand that those healthcare services, those vital healthcare services, are available to them, that there's not a stigma attached to obtaining them as well. So we need more ambassadors as far as that is concerned, and making sure that individuals are getting the information on how to connect to mental health care.
Tracy. Sheriff.
From the law enforcement perspective, we've had discussions with the county executive office, and some of the things we looked at, especially from the sheriff department, we went to Rikers Island, and we heard about their mental health court, their veterans mental health, and we went to acquire some information, see what we could bring back to Bergen County. Now, upon conversing with the county executive, the business administrator, evidently there's a template right now we have to deal with mental health. And as you can imagine, in the jail, you can identify a little quicker than you can in the street, but we can learn from that and carry it out and pass that information on. So right now, we're working with the courts. We should have more information coming forth with it, but just know from the standpoint of the corrections division and the sheriff's office getting exposure, we have reached out to larger entities, like I said, such as Rikers Island, to acquire that information and to be able to address some of these concerns.
From a prosecution's perspective, I know when a lot of you hear, oh, it was a mental health issue. When you hear a mental health issue, it does not mean that the prosecution ends. What it means is that the individual, the suspect, gets sent for evaluation to determine what mental health. And then there are series of steps that occur to determine whether the person knew what he was doing when he committed the acts that they committed. So when you hear mental health, it does not mean that's it, we're done, the person is off the hook. That's not the case. That just means there is an issue that needs to be investigated, that needs to be looked into, and then from there, the prosecution, if there is one, may take longer. But that is part of the investigation.
I've condensed most of it down to two other questions. One, I think it's I hope it's an easy answer, but in case it's not, I'll ask it. And one's a general community question. The first question, does New Jersey or Bergen County have access to the same technology that was used to track and apprehend the perpetrator in the Muncie attack? And I think that question basically meant was, we have obviously a great representation over here. Are we behind? I don't think we're behind. I think it was really a slew of agencies. But are we behind, or is there something that we can ask our federal government or our federal agencies or our state agencies for on the county level? I know we've always reached out to the sheriff, who supplemented our patrols during high holiness and whatnot. So
I would like to take that.
I'll just start by saying that, the techniques we have in New Jersey are very similar to FBI, which is Canadian State Police, and the county can speak to this as well, but, LPR is something you may have heard before, license plate readers, and that is something that is employed throughout New Jersey and has been for quite some time for investigative purposes. And as well as that, there's many other techniques that we won't get into, but just rest assured that all those techniques are exploited on a daily basis to make the most of the investigations and also to track those who are committing acts in terms of fleeing matches or the
I just want to say, in response to the question, the answer is yes, we have that technology. We feel we are more advanced than other counties, respectfully, and other states. We do have an APLR system in Bergen County. By the end of this year, we will track, or we will have the ability to track every vehicle that enters or leaves Bergen County. every vehicle that enters and leaves Bergen County every day, every hour, every minute. We also have, there's other technology out there. We're on the cutting edge of facial recognition software. Bergen County is at the cutting edge of technology with regard to law enforcement. So the short answer to that question is yes. The techniques that are applied in monthly, we have that technology. We have that technology.
Okay, I'll go with the last questions, just so I know you wanted to wrap it up more so people can ask one-on-one, and we can get to the one-on-one and the mingling right afterwards. So this is a question I had a bunch of, and it's, I know we put this together from an anti-Semitic point of view, but it's really overall a community aspect. And I'll read it. Safety and security is a concern for all residences. What will be done to protect all people who experience bias, racist attacks, whether anti-Semitic or not? So are there some other agencies here that represent other forms of hate crime or racist attacks? I'm not sure how to take that.
Some of our comments were specific to anti-Semitism, but that much of the work with the Division of Criminal Justice, the violence crime unit is all violence crime. Same with what Aaron Scherzer mentioned about the youth bias task force that Governor Murphy put together in August. That is looking at youth bias across all. So everything that we are talking about, there are specificities within each community, of course, that have to be addressed, and there's different things for the different cultures and the different events, but that doesn't mean that all day long we're not looking at all bias across the state.
Just to let you know, that report is filed. The law enforcement agency has a litany of categories that they can check off to categorize what the bias sensitive was, whether it's related to race, religion, sexual orientation. So it's just not about one aspect of the community, it's about all aspects of the community.
Any other? I just have one final question, and that is, you don't just have an army of 400 people here to help you. You have thousands of people that are just like the people in this room, frustrated, concerned, and want to be more engaged on coming up with a solution. So the question is, I know it's always about money, but sometimes it's also about legislation, as we heard today from the prosecutor. What could we as a community do to help you? What laws can we be pushing to help, your frustration of, if only we had this, or you spoke about some of the laws with
What about dialogue with each other and talking to each other and building a sense of community?
Of course.
Not laws and guns and talking about how we can protect ourselves. Talk to our neighbors. Talk to each other. None of the solutions here are about that. You see something, say something. Have people thought about who's going to be racially profiled? We can't just think about our interests in the Jewish community. We're part of a larger community. I've not heard anybody, any of the questions talk about that. My kids go to Jewish schools. I'm terrified, but I'm also terrified for other people in this community who are marginalized and potentially, I respect the Teaneck Police Department inherently, but we know what happens in this country with law and police enforcement. And we need to have these conversations and meet each other at the table and talk to each other as
community and
friends.
don't write about the police. Thank you.
I do not write about the police.
Blue Lives Matter.
You can also disrespect the format if you don't mind. I apologize. You can write down your questions and you can.
I wrote down that question.
All right, well, we got it out. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And you brought up a very good point, and that is community dialogue. That is, as a father myself, I have a young 15-year-old at home. I'm learning those ropes as well. I can share with you that Deb Kornavakia today, from the governor's office, led a meeting, and she mentioned something called the Interfaith Advisory Council. Now, this is something I've got a big stake in. I'm going to tell you why. This is a group that when we first started 5 years ago, we had about 213 members. That's a weird number, but I remember it. 213 members from 3 counties in the north, Bergen being one of them, my home county. Maybe a handful of religious leaders, concerned parents, community leaders. Fast forward today under Governor Murphy's leadership, Fast forward today on the leadership of the folks you're seeing up here. Fast forward today, based off the feedback we're hearing from you, we now have 3,500 interfaith leaders across all 21 counties, representing every major religion and sect. And that is the largest interfaith dialogue in the country. So thank you. Yes, we agree with you. I'm not done there. I think we could be doing more. I think we need to increase the dialogue. We talked about a whole of government approach. I think there's also a whole of community approach. I think we all need to be engaged, and I think if we have these conversations with leaders in forums like this, I think we can address that. But thank you very much, and we agree with you.
I just want to add, first of all, we in the county have a Human Relations Council that has people from all different faiths, all different ethnicities, and all different cultures coming together to talk about the different issues that are impacting all of our communities. I think, I'm not sure if it was the Washington Post or the New York Times or both that talked about anti-Semitism always being the canary in the coal mine. The thing that leads the way, that demonstrates the problems and the failings in our communities. We have to have a lot more conversations. I think that what has occurred in the month of December will certainly bring forward a different agenda for the Human Relations Council that they thought they may have been heading down this year. I know, we're just going to win more plug. Martin Luther King Day, we're going to have 1,000 kids from all over this county, all different cultures, working together, growing up our cities and getting to know each other. And I think that all of us, I know that the Jewish Federation, I sit on the board, but we all are engaged in having these ways of involving our kids and setting and exposing our kids to other cultures, but exposing other cultures to our kids and realizing that we have a lot of work to do is certainly the first step. I really encourage all of us in this room to be part of that conversation together as well.
One more comment on that. Through the Attorney General, there's something called the 21-21 project, which is 21 counties, 21st century community policing. And when the Attorney General first came into office about 2 years ago, he asked all 21 county prosecutors to have a series of meetings each quarter on particular topics. So 84 meetings a year in the community about the same issue, so that we've done bias, we've done juvenile justice reform, you name it. And so many counties are doing that anyway, and Prosecutor Estella and so many others are having those meetings, but we thought it was important to raise that dialogue, to have those same issues throughout the state, in addition to the ones that are most important in your local communities. And we recognize that we have that responsibility as well, not just to focus on one community. And about a week after Jersey City, we got together the Hudson County prosecutor and Chief Kelly in Jersey City to have, and Deb Cuernavaca from the governor's office, to have a meeting of community members. And it wasn't just the Jewish community, but it was also those that are involved in the violence intervention work there in the community, and all the people who are so traumatized day in and day out, and have that discussion about what we can do on that level. So I want to make sure that those things are happening, but obviously from your comments, they need to happen more, and we want to make sure that we hear all we can do to bring it to your communities as well.
When we first took over in the office, and you alluded to my undersheriff's Chief Warren office in the back, one thing we wanted to establish was a faith-based liaison to the community. And what we've done, the two rabbis, Joel and Nate, they're on our committee. We have Reverend Jackson, who's on our committee. We have an Imam Muhammad, who's on our committee. And since we've been there, we've had, how many dialogues? Over 20 different dialogues between each group to have discussions like what you're saying. So we have that, and we're going to put it out more. Like I said, thanks to the rabbis, thanks to the Imam who's not here, thanks to the cooperation with the prosecutor's office, we have that. Can we market it more? Yeah, we can market it more. But I think we have an established foundation where we're ready to move forward with it.
As I mentioned in the beginning, at the end of the event, please feel free to come on up and speak individually, one-on-one. Make sure you get information on how to contact their office, if there's something you need to find out as far as resources, etc. Oh, there's also donuts in the back. Hold on, I'd just like to ask my
Yes, very much.